welcome back to Project Ultimate Life. We are going to be doing an interview today with Reece. He's a personal trainer, fitness coach, high performance athlete, and we're going to learn a little bit about his experience and what he has to bring to the world. So, Reece, tell us a little bit about yourself, what got you into your reality, your upbringing, background, etc.
It's a big question, Jess.
Start small.
Where does it begin? I guess as a kid, most importantly, big misconception is that people thought I was a very fit and super strong little kid, and I've somehow just like continued that on as I've got older and older. But I couldn't be further from the truth. As a kid, I was the last picked in school for every sport, pretty much. I was this chubby kid. Loved sports, but never ever good at them compared to the other people in my year. So that made me a last pick, or not even a considerate in the teams. Be like, there's a third football team, maybe I'll go with them instead. Like I wouldn't get second pick or third or first team.
So you were on the C team.
I was in the C team. Yeah, imagine that. Yeah, it's a tough place to be, but definitely definitely strengthens you up as you go through school. But for me, as I started to get a little bit older, a little bit, I would say like bigger, I started growing out that chubby Reece, and becoming a bit more of an individual that can be a little bit more involved in different kinds of sports, not just stuff that's isolated to school. That allowed me to start getting into seeing like, where do I want to position myself? What kind of sports do I want to be involved in? And what sports do I really enjoy, most importantly as well? I was very lucky that close to my mum's house, there was an athletics track or athletics leisure centre facility that was built, like a 5-minute walk away. So that had an indoor track, sprint hall, an outdoor track. Lots of people go there to do like pole vault and high jump, and so it's a huge athletics facility. Plus, it was just a normal leisure centre as well. People doing Zumba classes and those kind of things too. So for me to be able to go there and then to be so close and then to see what I didn't know at the time, but were such high performing athletes who were also juniors at the time as well. They were like 15, 16. I'm like 12 or 13, and seeing them sprinting down the track and they're representing GB. Seeing
What's GEB for those who don't know?
Oh, sorry, Great Britain. Yeah, representing the country as juniors. So they're already high performing individuals that were, at the top of their game. So to see them flying down the track, huge six packs, super strong legs, incredibly fast, and people looking to them being like, wow, those guys are the guys at the track.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, that's something I would like to be a part of. That's something I want to have as well. So I didn't start there. I started with field sports, shot put, discus, and just on the club nights. You go there twice a week, just for the kids of the area. You just go and just to get involved in the sport a little bit. But I couldn't help but feel like this isn't my life. To be throwing javelins and shot puts. I don't want to be confined to these sort of like sports where you need to have a bigger physicality. Mm-hmm. Like I want to look like those guys that are flying down the track,
mm-hmm.
With the big chest and strong six pack. So I was like, that's what I want to do. So I started getting involved, and I found a coach who would take me on in his group. Guy called Jason. So his name's Jason. So I started training with him and the rest of the guys in the group. And to be honest, my area is a very white dominant area. But in our group, it was lots of Jamaicans, Nigerians, Ghanaians. So we're like the only group of like ethnically mixed, diverse people. Yeah. So like, and for me growing up in a white household and a white family, because I wasn't connected really to my dad's side of the family, the Jamaican and the Indian side of my roots, that kind of allowed me to feel like, I'm kind of at home here a little bit. Like I feel a bit more comfortable in this environment not compared to home, but just compared to like the external environments that often in like for school for example, there was like 3 or 4 black people in my entire year of like 300 people.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of gives you an understanding of like who's the majority, and as somebody who's growing up as a mixed child, trying to like work out who you are and what you're about and where you kind of feel comfortable to be positioned. That really helped me actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I trained with that group for on and off over 10 years. So that was our training group, and
what age did you start that?
That was at around 14.
Okay.
Yeah, around 13, 14 that I started doing athletics just twice a week, very light, a couple times a week, nothing serious, and then just developed 2 times a week, to 3 times, to 4 times, to 5 times, to 6 times, to then just being a full-time athlete, mm-hmm. and that being my primary focus. So I really, obviously in this time I'm going through school, I'm going through sixth form, I'm going to university. So I'm like going through like huge developmental stages as an individual in time, but equally progressing with athletics as well. I'm really enjoying that journey of just trying to progress, trying to be better. Yeah, for me, that's what's the most important thing, is just like that element of discovery and development. How much more can you do? How much faster can you be? How much stronger can you become? To dial in on all these elements, for me, as like an athlete that really focuses on like optimization and human development, which is also what I studied at university as well.
Okay, yeah.
Sports science and human performance, with coaching as well. That was just something that's always sort of like enticed me and intrigued me a lot.
Okay, so I heard what you said, which reminded me of this thing I was listening to just today, actually, that people who start and they come out in the beginning of life. So let's go back to what you had said about your upbringing, okay? The fact that you were a little bit of a chubby kid, you weren't the best athlete, you were on the C team, that kind of a thing. People who typically, because I know we're going to get into this, but I know you want to go now pro with High Rocks, like you have even more goals than, kind of where you are now.
Yeah.
The people who initially start out with this aptitude or this predisposition to be these amazing athletes often don't go as far as the more C average athletes, because they develop the grit, the discipline, and the perseverance to be able to move beyond just and kind of get to the height of your game. Do you feel like that kind of contributes to you now? I think you said a little bit. And then how did the discipline of having this while you were going through school help you stay on the right track and avoid things that maybe a lot of people get lost with or get distracted with, etc.?
I think because I've been so invested in my own development from such an early age, don't get me wrong, I was still drinking on the street corner, getting up to a little bit of mischief, to be honest, because of the friend circle that I had. But at the same time, I always knew that like I'm enjoying doing that thing a few times a week, and that thing requires me to be, it's an individual sport at the end of the day. It's not like you're turning up to a football practice. I played football as well at a younger age, but it wasn't like you're turning up to a team sport where if you're having a bad day, your team can carry you, you can kind of hide a little bit. Maybe because you're not having a good day, the coach subs you, and therefore you're off the pitch, and you can kind of get away with that. Like my sport is sprinting, where you're performing at like the most absolute level that your body can deal with, essentially the highest velocities that your body can deal with. And that sport requires you to be recovered, it requires you to be strong, it requires you to be like have the ability to put the amount of work in that you need to for those sessions, which ultimately requires a certain level of recovery. So like I knew, even though like I enjoyed the sport, I wasn't super serious with the sport. It was just something I just showed up to a few times a week and looked forward to just improving in some way, and also seeing my team. There was 10, 12, maybe 15 of us at some points in our group with Jason, of which he was also an athlete, and he was also working on himself as well as a mature athlete. And his son was in our group as well, so that kind of really created a nice like family atmosphere. But I think only as I've got older and older that I've started to be like, well, this is really what I want to do, and I've become more and more in tune with my body. So I know these are the behaviors that I know aren't conducive with me developing as an athlete or an individual, and just feeling good in myself. Like it's not just about what I can do in a session over an hour or 2 hours. It's like, yeah, but I want to feel good when I wake up and I encounter people. My job is forward-facing client relations, personal training. I want them to get towards their goals and feel good in doing that and enjoying that process. And if I'm like out drinking every night, or if I'm staying up late, if I'm not eating well, that's going to impact my energy and my ability to like support them in their journey as well. So it's a multifaceted like a level of reasoning as to why I like have these positive or like good practices.
Optimized behaviors.
Yeah.
Have you experienced any setbacks or challenges along your journey that maybe stopped you from ever interfered with your athletic performance or growth in that way?
So I've been very, very fortunate that I haven't had too many bad injuries in my sport. I don't know if that's because my coach made us do so much work in the winter that like when it came to the summer where you're running at your absolute fastest, my body was quite strong in being able to deal with that. But I do remember when I was 16, my mum lives on a road which has quite a big hill, and there's a road that also cuts through the bottom of it, which is also on a hill. My mum's road doesn't have speed bumps, so we used to race down my mum's road. All of the kids on my mum's road, we used to race down the road, and there was one day in particular, summer's day, where we raced down, and at the end of the road there was a big van, a truck parked on the end, so you couldn't see to the right the cars that were coming. So I just shot through, and at that moment I got hit by a car. I can still recall it now, cartwheeling in the air, landing about 30 meters away, bouncing on my hands and my knees, and then forward somersaulting onto the curb of some way. I don't know if I twisted or I don't know what happened, but I know I somersaulted, and there was a car that screeched, and the tire ended up, I'll say, no more than a foot away from my head, as a car was coming up the road as well. So I knew I wasn't dead or dying. I knew, I was just like, wow, that hurt. And then obviously the pain and everything then kind of ensued as well. And the sort of noise of everyone running down the street and shouting, oh my God. And then my mum coming, obviously, and being told as well that I'd been hit by a car. So that journey, although thankfully I guess I'm resilient, I didn't break anything. The impact was 60 miles an hour. My bike went from being a bike to being in an L shape. So the bike took a huge amount of the force.
Did you have a helmet on?
No. Oh. No. So I didn't hit my head. So I landed on all fours, and then I somersaulted and landed on my back. My knee was quadruple the size, had a lot of blood on the knee and swelling. So that impacted my ability to even just walk for about 8 weeks. Had some stitches in my foot and stuff. So these were like small things. It was kind of very much at the beginning, if you like, of my athletic journey, where I was training maybe 3 or 4 times a week. But that for me was a big realization of how valuable life is and how quickly your health or your life can be taken from you in a split second. From having the most amount of fun with your friends in the summer to doing something so innocent as just riding a bike and racing, it's something we've done throughout the summer every year, like so many times, to then put myself in this position where now I've made it a decision to just not stop and go straight through the road, and obviously that having a huge consequence to my health over that shorter duration of time. So whenever I'm thinking about something that or assessing if something is a good idea or not, those are one of the moments where I think back, I'm like, wow, that could have ended extremely bad. That could have literally ended my existence on the earth through such a small misjudgment or miscalculation error. When you're 17, so you don't make the best judgments or the best calculations in should I do this or not? You just kind of just go with it and hope for the best. So for sure, that was one of them that was my life is valuable and precious, and if you can, make the most of these moments. And I think for some people with that thought process, they'll just go off the rails and they'll just be like, let's just drink, let's just have fast food, and let's just do these things which perhaps are not best for you in your own growth, but they're fun. They release some dopamine that make you feel good. You surround yourself with some people that like to party. It's a fun atmosphere for some people. But for me, it was no, actually, I just want to take the long game and just focus on training and just focus on my own development. And that's like I said, a long game that takes time. It's not something that's going to come with an instant reward. It requires a lot of investment. So for me, that was kind of the path that I chose from then on, and just slowly through the years of training and sort of being exposed to different environments, purposefully exposing myself to different environments, that has allowed me to grow and then I guess kind of become the person I am today and going forwards, I hope.
Yeah. I feel like we hear this a lot. People who, especially when they were young, encountered some kind of a car accident or a bike wreck or something that either crippled them for a period of time or really they had to relearn to walk, or some of the motor skills, basic motor skills, that mindset of, wow, this journey on the planet is not that long. I'm going to take a different path. Whereas maybe people who haven't experienced as much adversity, or not even necessarily adversity, but kind of an injury or some kind of aha moment, maybe don't have that same oof, okay, let's ignore some of the more instant gratification type things and go for the how can I meet my goals based on where I'm going because I've now experienced this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's beautiful. What are some of the achievements that you've had in sport or in life that you want to share? Some of the really cool moments, things that have come up for you that you're just I would love the world to know this. But I'm too humble to say it, of course.
I'll be honest. There's not been a huge amount of for me that of achievements which have like encouraged me to keep going. If you like, I think the fact that I haven't achieved what I feel is very much um, is the driving factor to keep going. Because like, okay, my time isn't now.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like obviously I went to university and I'm in my halls, and there's loads of people that are on scholarships, and already representing the country in athletics and taekwondo and karate and all these other sports. And I'm just like a guy that just loves athletics, and I'm gonna continue to train and put the same amount of time, if not more, in than they are,
Mm-hmm.
and just see where that gets me. So I wouldn't say there's like a huge achievement on the sports side of things, and no real huge accolades where I won like a national championships or anything like that. I just don't feel like that my time has come yet. So that's why I'm just like, that's why I'm saying that it's the long game really. I'm just like, I'll just keep going, and that's why, through this journey, well, I'm sure we'll get onto it about the going from athletics to doing sprinting to moving to middle distance and now training for high rocks. It's just a journey that I'm on, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really caught up by like achieving something per se. It's just about like being better and getting stronger and fitter and faster.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, or some people, peak in middle school, or peak in high school, or peak in college, and they always talk about like those glory days. I was also asked this recently, like, what was your that time? I ran the 90K, okay,
Yeah.
and there was a Olympic athlete runner actually who was part of it, and he's now in his mid to late 50s, probably late 50s,
Right.
and we were having this conversation, and he said, "What was your peak moment?" And I thought about it, and I was like, I haven't gotten there yet, because I can share that mentality of like, the best is yet to come,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's segue into High Rocks, what your current goals are, and how are you preparing? Like, what does your day-to-day look like? Where do you want to go with that?
Yeah.
How are you preparing for that? And what would you like to achieve in that endeavor?
So first of all, it's probably best for me to explain what high rocks is. I think a lot of people still don't know what that word means, which I didn't, to be honest, not so long ago, maybe 6 months ago, I didn't also know. It's a very new sport. I think it only started in 2019. It started in Germany. It's a sport that requires you to run 8 1 kilometer repeats, followed by a movement. The movements are ski erg, they are burpee broad jumps, they are sled push, sled pull, rowing. The ergs you do 1 kilometer on. Farmer's carries, which you hold 2 kettlebells, walking lunges, and then the last station is wall balls, which is a squat and throwing the ball to the designated target. Now, these competitions are run all over the world, pretty much every weekend. I was fortunate enough a couple of months ago when I was at home in the UK to get myself booked in, so I went over to Milan and did my first competition. All of the events are hosted in exhibition centres indoors. Doesn't matter where they are in the world, and the setup is relatively the same. Of course, if one hall is bigger than another, maybe that means you need to run maybe only 2 laps to cover your 1K. A smaller hall will obviously need like 3 maybe, or 3.5. Sometimes it does vary like that. But overall, they try to standardize it as much as possible. And for me, having that opportunity to be like, as a numbers guy, because from doing sprinting, we have timing clocks, we have timing gates. So whenever you're going through a rep, you could be 100th off, and you're like, okay, or 100 faster, and you're like, yes. So the timing and the differences and the recoveries that we're taking during training were very, very precise. So having that opportunity now to be like, okay, here's the time that I did over the duration of the course, and they give you the breakdown of every single movement, how long it took you, and then how long it took you to also just get to that movement from running into the area. It's called the rock zone. So running into that area to start the movement and then leaving that station as well. Does that make sense? So you get all that data as soon as you finish the competition. So for me, it's like, wow, okay, there's clearly obviously a slight deviation across the world in some of the events or areas that they host it. But generally speaking, like you can try and constantly get better at incremental elements of the whole event from start to finish. So for me, coming from the running background, it's lucrative to me. I knew that I wanted to stay in a sport that required running as a foundation. It's something I really love, and I get a lot of gratification from doing, even if I don't want to do it some days. I don't want to run every day. I'm not like, yes, I get to run today. that really isn't the case. But I know that I will feel better afterwards. I know that I've done a lot of work so far across the year. So what's another 40-minute run or what's another hour run? It's nothing in the grand scheme of things. Like, pull up your pants, stop being a wuss and just get on with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that's going to help me in the long run with like the overall development that I want to work on, want to achieve. As I said, it's a competition that's run throughout the year for about 6 months of the year. So they have different categories. There's an open category for men and women, which is slightly reduced weight. Then you have the pro categories for men and women, which is slightly increased weights across the stations. And then the top is Elite 15. So this is the fastest 15 people in the world of men and women that run this race, and it's
And do you hope
very lucrative. So that's the big, I say a big goal, because it's once you get there, you still got to do the work. It's not like you arrive at the top of the mountain, you're like, okay, well, now I head back down. I would love to get to that top 15 to make it into the Elite 15 category. There's quite a long way to go till I get there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that. I've literally only done one competition, which I said was in Milan, which was just the general open men's category, and that was a nice introduction to the sport. And okay, this is what I need to work on. I'm going to be doing another one again in February in Dubai. I'm also going to do the open for that as well, because
Is there a race coming to Qatar?
as yet, no.
Okay.
I believe they are hoping to bring it here as well, because it's a really fast-growing sport, and the people at the top, there's some really big personalities, which I think will really attract a lot of people to it. And the fact that you can do it in teams as well, I didn't mention that. We have the open categories for men and women, but you can do teams of 2 and teams of 4 as well. So that means taking the same amount of, let's say at the end, there's 100 wall balls. You can split that between 2 or 4 people. So you can imagine like how much faster you move through the stations. You have to run together, you have to start and finish the stations together, but that creates a real sense of community as well, because like, well, I'm not as, maybe don't feel as confident to do it by myself, or don't feel as strong to do it by myself, but I can bring my partner in, male or female, that is strong, and we can work through it together. So I really think that gives a nice opportunity for people to try the sport and see if it's for them or not. And I think it will be. The more and more the sport grows, the more and more people become aware of it, I think the more and more people are going to start to get involved in it. And I do think gyms are going to be popping up that are like High Rocks gyms affiliated in the same way that CrossFit is. You have CrossFit boxes that are affiliated to the CrossFit brand. And I think the same thing is going to happen for High Rocks, in the coming years as well, which I'm really excited to see and be a part of too.
Yeah, that's cool. What would you say to somebody who, we're all on a journey, right? So somebody who maybe hasn't spent their entire life kind of focused in sport and attracted to it, and maybe has made different choices, or just they feel like they need something completely different. What would you say to them to either inspire them or encourage them to maybe dabble in this area? What are the benefits? What are the pros? What are the cons?
I think for a lot of people, it doesn't matter, and I think we've seen it now a lot because there's so many podcasts and stuff on just performance optimization. How many CEOs, how many hedge fund bosses are going to work with not only a personal trainer, but like a psychologist to work on their mental performance as well. So there's clearly a ever increasing opportunity and demand for people both in my field and people that are wanting to get involved in this field to develop and become better individuals in their chosen subject. It doesn't have to be in sport, but I do think that getting involved in a sport, let's just say you want to do like a mini triathlon, get involved in a team that does triathlon. There's always a big community, because that means you're running, you're swimming, and you're on the bike. You've seen it for yourself as well. Like, these communities really do grow and allow people to get involved in different areas of sport and activity. And for me, although not all activity is created equal, and I don't think some gyms or some studios have the best intentions on supporting their clients in the development, F45, I do think that overall, if people are moving and they feel good when they're moving, they should keep on doing that. If I can support in some way with my clients, which they wouldn't be with me if I wasn't, then that's even better. I do think people miscalculate or underestimate the importance of, or the benefit of, having a personal trainer, even if it is for, let's say, a 3-month or a 6-month stint, just to really allow you to dial in and focus on what are the key elements that I need to work on as an individual to get to where I want to get to. Could be in sport, could be in the office, could be in management, but just helping you feel better in yourself. And sometimes just having these conversations with people that are in a different sector can provide a different perspective. If you are a hedge fund boss or somebody who's managing a lot of people, I think it's quite easy to be very sort of blinkered by your perspective and what you need to work on. But having that more of diverse perspective from people from different backgrounds and spaces can really be beneficial to everyone's growth and development.
And is there anything you would specifically say to somebody who is younger and at the start of their journey, who maybe needs to get inspired? Like, how would they benefit from bringing sport into their life? If you could give like 3 points, or just something, like if you're speaking specifically to an 18-year-old version of yourself.
Big question. I would say, look, movement makes you feel good. Don't be in a rush. I think one of the biggest things I see, over the years, the younger guys in the gym, they want to lift heavy from the beginning. They want to jump the first few steps and just be on the top of the mountain already. And you got to really just embrace that journey. It doesn't matter. Like I said before, I was a very chubby younger kid, and I didn't rush. I wasn't like, I want a six pack. I'm like, those guys have a great six pack. They have strong legs. They have a big chest. And someday I would like to, look like them, but also be able to perform like them. So I think setting a clear intention on what it is that you want. There's a lot of people going into bodybuilding now, and there's a lot of guys on social media, creatives that are in that line of work, and I think it can be really encouraging for some people because they're like, wow, that guy's huge, he's natural as well, good physique plays a role, but they want to look good and they want to feel good in their bodies. But I would say the biggest thing is don't be in a rush. Like, study it. There's so much information now. Even just if you go to just YouTube or just search in Google, like different types of programming to get to X goal. There's so many options out there. Like, read, understand, try a little bit for yourself. I think people just are too much in a rush. They want to get to that end goal, and then they get there and it's like, okay, what's next? You achieved a certain size of bicep. Okay, but what's next? You're only 21, so where'd you go from here? How about like maybe getting into a triathlon, or how about trying to do a sport where how you look isn't the focus, but how you're able to perform it is. And that, I think, gives like a broader perspective on getting involved and trying different stuff.
How important are goals to keep a person motivated?
Yeah, I think goal setting is a huge component of staying on track. I don't think people do it enough. They say, I want to run a sub 3-hour marathon. Okay, but how are you going to get there? I'm just going to train. I'm going to do some intervals. I'm going to do some long runs. I'll do some sprint work, and I'll get there. It's like, I mean, you might, but you're really like throwing the ball in the dark. You have a clear direction of goal. For me, I always try to work backwards. I set the goal of whatever it is. Like for me, my high rocks in February. I set a goal that I want to try and go sub 1 hour, 5 minutes. What do I need to get there? I look at the stats that I did before. I look at where I definitely lost time. I think about my weaknesses in terms of like on those stations, what did I really struggle with? And then just seek to improve those incrementally over it would have been 6 months now. And then I hope in February then, with that action plan, if it goes to plan, I'll run sub 1 hour 5. That will be my accomplishment. But I think if we just shoot and be like, that's what I want, and we don't put anything in between, there's no ladder to get there, you're really not really setting yourself up for success. You're just making a dream. You're dreaming really. It's not a goal.
So if somebody wanted to work with you, get a hold of you, is that a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my schedule honestly is quite busy at the minute, which I'm very thankful for, because with the personal training line of work, clients come, clients go, it can be quite transient sometimes. And especially here living in Qatar, a lot of local clients, they like to travel for a good period of time. So that does free up some stuff, but people can for sure contact me on my Instagram.
What is your Instagram?
Yeah, it's just my name, so it's Reece Bowers 1. You can DM me there and hit me up. I'm quite selective with who I take on. I don't just want somebody that just wants to lose a few pounds or whatever. For me, that isn't fun, because I think if you're doing the job, you also want to be able to invest in it in a good way. In the same way investors, right? Like Dragon's Den, they don't just throw money at everything because it sounds like a good idea. They select the ones that they think they can bring the most input to and support the best. So I kind of approach it in the same way. But that doesn't mean you can't message me. Doesn't mean you can't ask for advice. Doesn't mean you can't just hit me up and be like, I like this video, or I want to do something similar to this. How would you go about helping me do that? The conversation is always open. The door's always open for conversation. Yeah.
All right, and then let's end off this. How important is cold plunging?
Oh, I love it. I didn't do it today yet, but I need to do it. I will do it.
Okay.
Like, I think there's some physiological changes to the body that happen when you do cold plunge, which are undeniable. The science, the facts, the information is there. There's, of course, that other side of it as well, where it's, I'm trying to think of the word for it, but essentially it's a feeling. It's a feeling of knowing, okay, the water's 4, 5, 6 degrees today, and I'm really not looking forward to being uncomfortable, because let's be honest, it's not a comfortable feeling. It's not an enjoyable sensation when you first get in, but as soon as you've done it, you unlock something in your mind of like, oh, I did it. It could be the same thing for people feeling like, I need to get out, just lace up my trainers and just go for a walk or an easy run. There's a block there. There's something in the mind that's like, I can just choose the easy route. I can just not, and there's that same feeling every day. Doesn't matter how many kilometers I've run, how many competitions I've done, no matter who I've coached or what I've been able to do in a session. The feeling of getting into the cold plunge is the same every day, and it's that I don't want to do it, that I don't want to get in there. But the sensation once I've done it is like, yes, I did it. I've overcome that mini hurdle in myself, and yeah, some days it's definitely easier than others, but the feeling afterwards where you're shaking to warm up and you're like, yes, like, this feels good. This feels really good, and I'm actually enjoying it more now that it's colder outside, to be honest.
Yeah.
It takes me a bit longer to warm up, and it reminds me that like for a little bit longer, like I'll overcome that. I was thinking that yesterday. I had a rowing session in the afternoon, and it was about 1:30, and I was doing it outside, and it was quite warm yesterday. So I was like sweating, just going through this rowing session. And I was like, oh yeah, shit, I did cold plunge this morning. That was uncomfortable. And now I'm feeling a little bit of discomfort in a whole different way because it's warm outside. So it's easy to forget that you've done it, but the sensation and the physiological changes that are happening in the body for hours and hours after you've done it are undeniable. So that's why I'm going to keep doing it. And I'm so thankful and grateful that I have that outside, that we're able to do that every day if we want to.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a real blessing, and it's definitely been part of my journey and wanting to have. So that makes me even more like aware and encouraging to keep doing it, because I've wanted it for a long time. I heard a quote the other day. It was like, sometimes we forget that what we're living right now is what we've dreamed of the whole time.
There is no truth.
And I was like, damn, I looked up, I look out, and I have a balcony, which I've always wanted in an apartment. I have cold plunge on the balcony, which honestly I've wanted for years. I used to just do cold showers at home. There was no space to have a cold plunge, or I didn't have the money to even have it. And then I look out and I see the sea, the sun is shining. I was like, damn, yeah, this is something I've dreamed of, and I've got it. So don't just take it for granted and be like, oh yeah, it's on there, but don't use it. Make the most of it. Like, enjoy the opportunity that you have, even if it's uncomfortable, to do the cold plunge, to embrace your surroundings. I think life can still be fast paced, even if it's slower here compared to me living in London. The life is much slower, but it's still easy to forget and enjoy it and appreciate and be grateful for these little things we have around us, which we've always wanted.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Remember, your life, your journey, your choice. Thank you very much, Reece.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Aww.